Whenever the phrase wage dispute is mentioned in China, it doesn't evoke images of justice prevailing. Instead, it conjures heartbreaking scenes. Migrant workers forced to kneel, beg for their hard-earned pay, or sleep rough on the streets. A recent wave of videos has once again laid bare the tragic absurdity of China's legal system and the cold indifference shown towards its struggling workers. The phrase malicious wage seeking has become a favorite tool for businesses and local authorities in recent years, frequently appearing in public discourse. In countless labor disputes, companies weaponize this term to dodge responsibility or stall wage payments, using it to smear workers who demand what they are rightfully owed. These workers, often desperate to recover their wages, are branded as troublemakers, accused of causing chaos or stirring up public emotions. In this way, the real issue of unpaid wages is cynically flipped, casting the wage seekers as the villains instead. To uphold what they call social stability and a favorable business environment, local governments and law enforcement often lean towards supporting businesses. When dealing with wage disputes, they don't hesitate to detain workers administratively or slap them with charges like extortion or creating public disturbances. Outside the gates of China's Sinochemistry 14th Construction Company, a woman crawled on her hands and knees, begging for the return of 180,000 yuan, roughly $25,000, her husband's blood and sweat. Through tears and trembling cries, she pleaded, "Please, I beg you, help us. We don't even have money to buy rice for our family." Her heart-wrenching screams weren't just a cry of despair. They were a searing indictment of a society steeped in indifference and injustice. Her desperate plea lays bare a brutal truth. Families of grassroots workers are utterly voiceless in the face of power and capital. Their legitimate rights are not just ignored by the law, they are reduced to kneeling and begging for the wages that rightfully belong to them. This isn't just a heartbreaking tragedy, it's a damning indictment of the Chinese government's systemic neglect of workers' rights over decades. What kind of social system compels a wife to sacrifice her dignity just to keep her family afloat, just to maintain their basic livelihood? And what kind of legal system turns a blind eye to the chronic abuse of wage delays? When even the most basic labor rights can't be upheld, where is the so-called rule of law? Where is justice? In another video, a father kneels in the street, his desperate cries piercing the air. "Pay me back! I only need 200,000 yuan. My child is in the hospital waiting for surgery." His voice trembles with a mix of rage and despair. Once owed 300,000, this father was forced to lower his demand to 200,000, just enough to try to save his child. Yet, his humiliation and pleading weren't enough to recover his rightful wages. To make matters worse, without a hefty hospital deposit, his child's life-saving surgery would not proceed. Why are scenes like this so disturbingly common in China? Grassroots workers are forced to sacrifice their dignity just to survive, while wage-dodging companies roam free under the shield of law and power. This isn't just a humiliation for workers, it's a damning indictment of the country's so-called rule of law and broken system. The CCP government may claim to protect workers' rights, but in reality, such desperate cries are smothered by indifference and crushed under power's manipulation. In China, malicious wage withholding has turned into a go-to tactic. Construction companies work tirelessly to finish their projects, only to be ruthlessly exploited by developers who declare, "Take half the final payment, or you get nothing." This so-called halving strategy has become a weapon for some capitalists to squeeze every ounce of profit from workers, while legal and regulatory authorities turn a blind eye, as they have for years. Why is this happening? Because in China, the alliance between power and capital routinely overrides the rule of law. Workers are sacrificed for corporate greed. The Chinese government proudly proclaims its commitment to rule by law. But in reality, the law has devolved into a weapon wielded by the powerful, leaving the rights of ordinary workers crushed underfoot.
We're just trying to get paid, but the roads are completely blocked. I've been sleeping here at the company for over a week, and no one has stepped up to resolve this. Damn it. The boss loses money, and we're the ones who have to suffer for it. It's so hard. This year has been unbelievably rough. Sigh. It's all about getting paid. The main gate is blocked, and we've been here for days demanding our wages. There are so many of us that there's not even space left to lay down sleeping mats. No one in charge is stepping up. They've owed us 3 or 4 months' wages. Not a single penny has been paid. We're just asking for the money we've worked so hard for, but getting paid feels harder than robbing a bank. It's been days now. I've slept here for several nights, but the bosses refuse to show up and deal with this. We have no money for food, nowhere to sleep. It's hopeless.
At Guangzhou's Baiyun Airport Terminal 3, months of unpaid wages have left hundreds of migrant workers with no choice but to sleep on the bare ground, desperately waiting for an answer. Their voices are heartbreaking. Getting paid feels harder than robbing someone. We just want the money we worked so hard for. But where do these voices really go? Company leaders vanish, government officials turn a blind eye, and workers are left waiting in despair. This is the true face of the so-called socialist state and how it treats its workers. The Chinese government often claims to be the party of the working class. But why is there nothing but silence when those workers need protection the most? These migrant workers have given their all to build the city's prosperity, yet wage delays have left them homeless. This withholding of wages is not just an economic harm, it's a blatant attack on human dignity and respect. The cold indifference of the government and businesses only makes this injustice worse.
OK，你不要站你们公共，我站在门口怎么了？公众场合地方，我站在门这个地方怎么了吗？这里构成扰乱单位秩序。我这就扰乱单位秩序。我现在第一次警告，快交给我给，快上来。第二次警告，政府警官。
The government police are just like that. We're migrant workers out here trying to get the wages we've earned, but no one is helping us. Instead, they stand there, hands on their hips, looking all confident, like they're above it all. What did I do wrong? Is it a crime to ask for my paycheck? Am I causing trouble? Did I break the law? I just can't believe society can't do anything about people like this. They won't even let us stand near the entrance anymore. I worked so hard, day in and day out, and now they won't even let me stand at the door. How is that fair? The bosses are inside, sitting comfortably drinking tea. Who's going to solve our problems? Why can't they come out and deal with it here? Last year, back in 2021, I was here demanding my wages legally, and now it's considered illegal. What's happening to this society? It's been years since 2021, and I still can't even stand by the doorway. They say it's their place, their turf. Look at all these people here working so hard to earn their wages, and they haven't been paid a single penny. And now they're saying we're invading their turf. When I was breaking my back building those buildings, where were they? We haven't seen a dime. We're asking the bosses to come out and solve this, but they're all just sitting in their offices, sipping tea.
What's even more heartbreaking is when migrant workers demanding their rightful wages are branded as troublemakers by developers. When the police show up, instead of seeking justice, they scold the workers for disrupting public order and order them to leave. This kind of enforcement lays bare the lie behind the CCP regime's slogan that police serve the people. Demanding fair wages is a basic right for workers, not a disruption. Yet in this environment, workers are left with no way to defend their rights and risk becoming targets of law enforcement crackdowns. Using power to crush the vulnerable isn't just an insult to the rule of law, it tears apart the very fabric of social justice. Even more absurd is the case of a female lawyer in Shandong who fought for 75 migrant workers and won their wage case, only to be sentenced to 4 years in prison for disturbing social order. Meanwhile, the contractor who withheld the wages walked away without facing any consequences. This verdict is nothing less than a blatant mockery of law and justice, from women kneeling in the streets to demand their wages to fathers begging to save their children's lives, from ruthless wage-cutting tactics to the outrageous imprisonment of lawyers trying to help. These tragedies are no coincidence. They are the inevitable result of the CCP system's long-standing disregard for workers' rights. The laws that are supposed to protect workers have instead been twisted into shields for capitalists and bureaucrats. The CCP government isn't just responsible for the rampant phenomenon of malicious wage withholding, it's also accountable for the systemic oppression that enables it. The slogan of governing the country by law is nothing more than a flashy cover-up when faced with these harsh realities. The CCP regime consistently prioritizes social stability over workers' rights, shielding the interests of capital and power while reducing workers to mere tools who are forced to kneel and beg for the wages they've earned. If the CCP continues to respond to the cries of grassroots workers with indifference and repression, these tragedies of kneeling to demand wages won't just continue. They'll become undeniable evidence of the regime's crumbling legitimacy. The so-called party of the working class has strayed far from its original promise, turning into a machine that actively oppresses the very workers it claims to represent. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. I'm Nancy. See you next time.